Okay, so this morning we're going to go ahead and continue on with our sprayer 3440 part 3, I guess is what our part will be today. This is going to be dealing with the hydraulic cylinders that raise the booms and swing the booms in and out. Both of those cylinders, the packing inside of them and the wiper seal is leaking oil bypassing them. So instead of taking a chance of blowing one in the middle of the field whenever it's go time and we got to be spraying, I'm going to go ahead and break them apart. I've already split the cylinders and actually have the rod and the gland out of the actual can of the cylinder. And I'll show you how that goes back together whenever I get our steel kits today. And I'll show you how to put those back together and then put them back on the machine. So before we go into that, remember last night I asked you a question. So today I'm going to go ahead and give you the answer. Maybe you done your homework and commented. There's been several people watch that video, but hadn't been a whole lot of answers given to that question. So y'all don't forget to go down there to the comments and drop an answer to that question. And the question was, how many lines are on top of the head of a grade 8 bolt? And I told you it was very confusing because in the way we think about things, if we were walking down the bolt bin aisle looking at bolt bins, if we're talking about a grade 8 fastener, you would just about assume that there'd be 8 lines on top of that fastener. But in the hardness scale on the standard system, we don't always like to do things the way it makes the most sense. So we actually, on the head of a grade 8 fastener, you'll see right there, there's actually just 6 lines on top of that fastener. So anytime you're dealing with a standard fastener, you have to remember that you always count the number of the lines and add 2 to it, and then that will tell you the hardness. The other thing you can look for is most of the time a grade 8 fastener is going to be golden color, and so that's easy to identify. One thing that I teach guys a lot of times too, and I tell people is I see people using the wrong wrenches on the wrong kind of fasteners, being standard versus metric. And on the standard fasteners, you will always see some kind of line on top of them to designate that it's a standard, unless it's a hardware grade bolt, which is the softest bolt, and it won't have any lines on it typically, and usually they're going to be chrome in color. But on a metric fastener, the metric system uses a numerical number on it. It's either 8.8 or 10.9 or 12.9, depending on the hardness of the fastener. So anytime you're looking at something before you start a project and you want to decide which set of wrenches and sockets do I need standard or metric, look at the head of the bolt, and that'll tell you before you go get carried away and bring all the wrong tools out and have to make 15 trips back and forth to the toolbox. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into tearing these cylinders apart, and once I get the actual gland nut off the bottom of them and start pulling the packing and the wiper seal and stuff off, I'll move y'all around and set you up where you'll get a better view of actually what I'm doing. Alright, so you can see the nut right there that I just backed off. Depending on the size of the cylinder, sometimes those can be a booger to take off. So there's the actual bottom of the packing. Alright, and so the gland just slides right off. You can see up here you got a wiper seal here. You can see those are literally so deteriorated they're falling all to pieces. That just comes with age and time. Being stored outside has a lot to do with it, but we'll dig all those out here in just a second and try to save them the best we can so we can go get our kits here in a little bit. We can get y'all a little closer up to the action so you can see actually what's going on. This one here I suspect has been off before. I can see where they've tried to use the wrong size fastener or the nut socket on it to take it loose, so this may get interesting. No problem for the Milwaukee. We've got used to using the cordless Milwaukee stuff. Service truck has an air compressor on it, but my actual shop has an air compressor in it too. But pretty much the only thing we use an air compressor for is airing up tires, but even at that, we bought the small Milwaukee tire inflators, and that's about the best $100 you'll ever spend on the farm. Because we jokingly talk about at our place, I don't know how it is at y'all's place, but everything comes to live at our farm to have flat tires and dead batteries. Whether we put brand new ones on it or not, they still always manage to die. So that's kind of our running joke. We get a new tractor in or anything, that it always comes here to have a flat tire and dead battery. And it kind of comical. I bought new to me tractor this summer from a good friend of ours over in Alabama that we know from years ago in the auction business, and jokingly called him when I was going to pick it up and said, hey, you know, we're coming to get that tractor in tomorrow and just want to make sure it don't have any flat tires or dead batteries. And he said, well, the tire wasn't flat the last time I was there at the barn looking at it, but you know, who knows. So get over there, and lo and behold, we pull up and tractor had a flat tire on it. So we got a good laugh about it. So we said jokingly that it was going to fit right in at our place, and it has so far. But whenever we got it in, we went ahead and put brand new tires on it. So all right, I'm going to move right here, move you around, and work on the side of the truck, and we'll pull these steel kits out of these packing and stuff. So hold on just a second. Okay, so got my pick. I'm going to start trying to walk these up out of there without breaking them, but it's pretty much a lost cause on these. This is the fun part too. This is typically where you ain't careful, you'll jab a pick in your hand. So what they'll do is I won't actually go to the dealership that the machine. These Spra Coupes are actually serviced and sold through AGCO dealerships, and that's where you have to get all your parts from. But I won't actually go to them. I have a local hydraulics shop in it's actually C&L Hydraulics in Melendale, Georgia, that we go get all our seal kits from. Usually, if you go buy a seal kit from an actual equipment manufacturer, it'll probably be triple, if not 4 times as much as what it will be to go into your local hydraulic shop. But these seals here, probably no bigger than these are, probably 30-40 bucks a set, whereas if we went to AGCO and bought them, they're probably going to be 120, 150 a piece. Okay, so there's the actual inner seal on the gland. That's what's left of the wiper. We'll put those in a Ziploc bag and take them with us, but they ain't much use taking them. I'll take the glands with me, and then that way they'll be able to match them up that way. On the outside of the gland that seals where the threads is at, there's usually, on this style, there's an O-ring, and then there's a flat plastic washer, and you just roll them up off there. The other thing too is you got to remember what order these come off, and be sure to put them back on in that same order. But luckily, with y'all guys watching, if I don't put it together right, I'm sure somebody will yell at me in the comments section and let me know that I missed it. But with videoing now, it's going to make it easier for me to keep them straight. This ring right here, when we go to put it back on, more than likely what I will do is take it and put it in some hot water and try to heat it up. And when you heat it, it makes it a lot more pliable. This ring is very, very stiff, and usually once you actually put it on the actual packing down in the center of the cylinder, this is actually what holds the fluid and makes the cylinder move left or right or in or out. So this seals on the canister of the cylinder. But once you put it on, you'll have to stretch it a little bit. So one trick that I have learned is to take a regular old, just cheap worm gear clamp like this right here that fits that size and actually clamp it down. And it don't take long, but usually, you know, a couple hours or so of being clamped like that, it will cause that guy to contract back down and make it easier to go back in. If you're not careful and you go to shove it back in and you don't make sure that that's pushed down like it needs to, you run the risk of nicking that whenever you go to loading that cylinder back in the can, and then you'll be right back to square one again. You'll actually have more than likely you'd have a different problem. That was not the problem we were having here. Our fluid was coming external of the cylinder through the wiper seals. This right here, usually if this is cut, you're going to see that the cylinder gets really hot to a touch, and it will cease to operate because it's bypassing the fluid from one side to the other, and it's probably not going to function. So there's the first one tore apart. The second one, just the same thing all over again. I'm going to move down here. I'm going to pick me up some Ziploc bags out of the house, and that way I can put the what's left of the seals in that bag. Help keep them straight with what cylinder they come from. This machine actually has this same cylinder on each side of the machine, and so I'm actually going to go ahead and buy kits for both sides. While we're into doing all the repairs on the machine, I'm going to go ahead and take the other cylinders off that I left on the machine, and go ahead and rebuild them too. It's kind of one of those things, why not? If these are leaking, more than likely, if I don't fix them, the kind of luck I have, if I don't fix them right now while I'm working on it, they'll break as soon as we go to the field. And I try to do everything I can to keep us from being broke down in the field. Me and the guys that work with me on the farm, we all farm part-time. So unlike a lot of the other guys you may watch on YouTube, they're professional row crop farmers. In the South where we live at, there's very few full-time farmers. Majority of the people that farm here, we all work a public job off the farm, and so any time that we can do little things like this to help reduce the amount of breakdown time in the field, because we may only have a couple hours each day when we get home from work to try to get something accomplished. So when we are working, it sure enough is go time where we got to go. So I actually take pretty good pride in our equipment and try to maintain it at the highest standard I can, just so that we can try to reduce those breakdowns. But what you'll notice is the channel continues on and we begin to get into other jobs around the farm and stuff. You're going to notice that we don't, there again, like the professional row crop guys, we're not running 2023, 2024 equipment. The newest tractor that we have is 2009, but we run a lot of equipment that's at least 30 years old. We run a lot of stuff that we even have some that's 40 and 50 years old that we run, just because of the overall operating costs, because we're not using it day in and day out. We're able to run that older equipment. But the funny thing is we run that old equipment, and we honestly, because of the amount that we have and what we're running and the amount of hours we put on each one, for the overall ownership of everything, it is much cheaper for us to run 40-year-old tractors and have to do a lot of maintenance on them than it is to make that monthly payment. So it's all in how, what works best for you. That's what we do. We enjoy working with the old school stuff. I grew up with my grandpa farming, and you notice the channel's named E&W Farms. So my name's Evan. So that's what the E stands for, and the W was for my grandpa, that actually this is his farm that I'm continuing to own and operate, but his name was Willard, and so it's E&W Farms. We farmed as a partnership early on, and then when he got sick, I began to take over. And so now it's me and my parents. My mom and dad are still actively involved in the farm, and I have two siblings, and they both farm with their spouses, but they farm in other counties, and do the cattle business too. So that's a little bit about where the name came from, and so it's one of those things. It's a family tradition. We kind of try to carry it on. So we've got our cylinders all tore apart. We're ready to go to the hydraulic store. Like I said, I'm going to do that today, and then when I get back, we get us some seal kits. I'll pick up here where we left off, and we'll go from there. So we'll see y'all here in a bit. Alright, so I was able to pick up enough seal kits to pack 2 of the 4 cylinders. They didn't have enough to do all 4, so they were going to order me 2 more kits, and I'll pick them up the first of next week. And we'll continue on with the hydraulic cylinder stuff whenever we get that. We may add that into another video, but tonight we're going to try to go ahead and get these finished up, and go ahead and show you how to put these back in the can that we left mounted on the machine. That way, so you can kind of see full circle, and on the next one, when I get the next 2 kits in, I'll show you how to remove those cylinders out of the actual cans, and show you how I leave half the can on the machine, so it's not nearly as aggravating to put it back together. So we got our new wiper seals. You can see there maybe the difference in the condition of that seal compared to the seals that we removed whenever we got them torn apart there earlier in the day. I like to take grease and put inside of these seals just to make them slide on the rod a little easier, in hopes that I don't tear these inner seals and tear this wiper seal whenever they first go on. Sometimes we'll even take some penetrating oil and actually spray the rod down, just trying to make it just slide as easy as we can, because once you get them on there, if you're not careful, you'll wind up cutting those seals and then be right back to square one again. So I've got my two glands actually greased up good, so I'm now going to put those on the rods. We figured out once we got to the hydraulic shop that there was literally no difference between the two as far as the kits. The rods were the same size, the kits were exactly the same. The only different was the actual piston inside of the where the sealing piston was at for the packing. One was longer and one was shorter, so that was the only difference. So we got to be sure that we get them mounted up on the correct one, and then go from there. But first things first, I'm going to go ahead and put the gland back on the rod. You got to be careful whenever you go to putting them through there. That threaded piece, if it hits in there on those seals, it'll cut that seal out every time. So I'm gonna go ahead and this grease that's here, I'm gonna put it up here on these O-rings to make it slide back down in the can better. It won't hurt anything. I'll look like a tar baby when I get done with this. This is old cheap black grease that we had. Just been trying to use it up, but it makes a mess. Alright, so there's that guy on there. I'm gonna go ahead and put the other gland on, and when I get that on, I'm gonna turn you off just a second, look back at my pictures, make sure that I put the right center, the piston in it on the right rod. That would be a bad mistake. Just like that. Together. Alright, let me turn y'all off just a second. I'm gonna look back at my pictures, and then we'll turn y'all back on, and then we'll put the piston in it and put the nuts on them. So hold on just a second. Okay, so I actually had them in the right order sitting there on the actual workbench here on the side of the service truck, but just wanted to double check. It's easier to check it now than it is to get them put back together, because I think there's a little difference in the rod length on the two. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this back on here just like so. And one thing that I do, there was not any Loctite on these whenever I tore them apart, but I always put just a dab of blue Loctite on them. Now if you plan on selling the machine and you hate the guy you're selling it to, then that's a good time to use red, but hopefully we're gonna get along better than that. So if you sell me something, maybe I'm gonna try to do you a favor, and maybe you'll take the consideration my way too. See if I can hold these. They weren't that tight anyways. Looks about like it was before. Get them both on here, and I'll put them back in the vise and give them a good hammer for good measure. be put in a vise. All right, hold on just a second. Let me turn y'all around. We'll mount these guys up in a vise and then we'll go further. Up in the vise here, I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can finish tightening this one down with an impact here in the vise. Okay, should be good there. While we've got them off, these are greasable on the end. I'm going to make sure that the grease actually goes through the fitting. Like it's supposed to, which it does not. Okay, so while we're here, it's easier to fix it right now. Prepared. It was 7/16. Good thing I grabbed both. Saved me a trip. There's a good example of why it's important to grease equipment every so many hours. Like they say, each manufacturer has their own time frame that they want equipment greased in. Grease is cheap. It's cheap enough for more people were to buy it, but they don't. Here we go. Usually I try to run, depending on the application or depending on what kind of grease we run, most of the time we're using some kind of moly based grease. It just goes really good on pins and bushings. The moly provides an extra slick coat on the steel. If it's something that's slinging, like in a PTO drive shaft, we'll usually use a red and tacky of some kind. Used Mystic number 6 for years. Usually I'll buy Mystic or Valvoline, something of higher quality. It's one of those things I try not to cheap out on it, if all possible. I see something that we didn't get at this. So there's an O-ring that goes right here at the top. And I had them in the kits, and because I was going to get new ones, and the guy, I didn't bring the old kits back home with me, we threw them away. So that may cause me problems right there. I've got some O-rings in an O-ring kit in the barn. I'll check in there and see if I got something that'll fit that. Maybe that won't come back to haunt us. But either way, it is what it is. We'll make do with it one way or the other. Cylinder's packed. All of our seals and stuff back in it. We just got to figure out what we're going to do about that top O-ring. So let's go see if we got an O-ring that'll fit that in the O-ring kit. And if not, we'll have to fix something up there. I was trying to remember. I think there might have been a plastic ring that went in behind that too. But maybe it's just an O-ring and we'll get away with that. So we'll go in the barn now and get in there where the machine's actually at, and go further. Okay, so we're back in the barn here where the actual sprayer is now. Got in here and got my O-ring kit that I have here in the barn. It's supposed to be on a service truck. We had it in here working on another project. And I'm actually going to take my pick, clean some of this trash and debris out of here. See if I can clean that up just a little bit. And I actually looked up and had an O-ring that would work, or at least I hope it will work. Don't know. All that does is just seal that into the can. So, alright. So we're now ready to install these guys back on the actual machine. And I'll climb up here and move my ladder around and stuff, move a couple things out of the way. Get my ladder set up, and I'll take some paper towel and stick down in there and clean the actual can out, and then we'll try to stick the first one in and see if we can get it tightened back up, situated. But well, give me just a second, we'll get that done, and then we'll turn y'all back on. Okay, so we're ready to start trying to mount this on the machine. We'll do the one that's closest to the ground first, and then I'll do the second one up here. But you can see here's our actual can. You can see that it does have a little bit of dirt and rust down in there. Usually try to take something and shove that all the way up in there. Right over here. Reach over top of y'all. This system on this machine had been contaminated with water at some point in time, and so we actually have done a full flush on the hydraulic system of this machine. Look down in that barrel there, right here. That's where the actual rod of the cylinder is going to go in. So I'm going to set you around here like this, so you can actually see me try to fish that guy in there. But we actually have done a full flush on this machine. We're going to go ahead and, whenever we initially connect everything back up, probably going to wind up leaving the hydraulic lines loose on it in a couple of places unintentionally. So whenever I hit all the controls for everything, it'll blow all the contaminated fluid that's left in all the valving and everything out. I hate to do all this work for everything and then still wind up having issues. This guy squared up in here. Pin put back down in here. Just like that. Find some penetrating hole for that. Those things right there, they can be a bear to deal with. Coat it up good. Now I see guys do this all the time, and I yell at students at work. I'm a teacher. It's my professional job off the farm. And I always tell students that there's the right tool for every job, and sometimes it's the most expensive tool, but you'll see guys, there's nothing worse or more aggravating to me than seeing somebody that they, instead of not having the right tool and just quitting and going and buying it, they'll kind of improvise. But there are times that you'll put the actual gland socket on here that's fit for this, and you'll wind up wringing the gland or oblonging the holes out. But if you got the right tool, you don't have that happen very often. I see guys put chain wrenches on here and pipe wrenches all the time, and it just scars that up. I'll show you the other side of this machine that's actually been done that way, because they did not do this with the actual wrench to do it with. A lot of people usually try to use a chisel to do this too. I've seen that done. It oblongs the holes and makes a big mess. But we got into doing several cylinders. I have here lately on the farm, and so I took the liberty and went and just bought me the set of sockets for this job, and I'll show you them here in just a second, because I will have to have them to get this seated all the way. There's actually 2 of them. They're not cheap, I'll say that much. They're about $100 for the set. Let's see how well y'all can see. Back y'all up just a little. There we go. That way y'all ain't all up in the business. I know you want to see, but I gotta have some room to work. But this is the actual tool. It goes on a 1/2-inch ratchet. These are Carlisle. These are part number 700-983. But this one here will do the smaller pin sizes, and then I have one that does the larger pin size too. But like I said, I think it was about $100 for both of them. But it was something that I was seeing I was going to be working on a whole lot. And like I said, I just didn't want to do it with a chisel or pipe wrench. I try to teach students working on equipment and stuff that you want to do your customer right, and you want to treat everybody's equipment like it's yours, and that's fine and well. If that's the way you want to treat your stuff, you go right ahead. But I try to make my jobs look as professional as I can, and it just that mentality usually will go on into the craftsmanship of the work that you're doing too. But that's my 2 cents. You like I said, you do whatever you want to. If you want to do it with a punch and a chisel, that's fine. I've seen an interesting topic here a couple of months ago back on one of the cattlemen's groups that I'm friends with on Facebook, and it said the 5 most expensive words in the cattle and ranching and farming businesses. We've always done it that way. Like I said earlier today, I grew up farming with Grandpa. A lot of the things I do today is because that's the way me and him done it. But if he was still around, there's times me and him might not see eye to eye on the way I do things. Just because we always done it a way, don't mean I'm afraid to try something different. But it's just, I don't know, so you think of it however you want to. One thing, I should have gotten a shorter ratchet out of the service yard. Big old long ratchets and knives, kind of a pain too. This is the aggravating part with these right here, and especially still trying to do it on the machine and with a stinking ratchet that's 35 miles long. Oftentimes I am not as strong as what a lot of people are, so I wind up buying humongous ratchets and stuff to try to compensate and be able to accomplish anything. The boys that work with me on the farm give me crap for it all the time. But it pays off in a lot of ways, because oftentimes I'm the one that gets to ride the equipment and stuff, because I'm not stout enough to do the work that they're all strong enough to do. So it's this part of it. Alright, so I've got this land seated back down on here. Now, we'll see that's probably more than likely plenty tight enough. That's another thing. I see guys just go crazy stupid on tightening those up, and they don't really have to be tightened that tight. Same thing with the hydraulic fittings. I see that a lot too. they're over tight. All right, so here on the bottom of this pin, I'll get us a new Carter pin. I keep Carter pins on the service truck. We put brand new ones in all the time. I don't fool with them. Usually when I'm taking them off, I just cut them, yank them out, and then they're good to go. All right, so that cylinder's in. This one's ready to go to work. I'm gonna move my ladder over here, and I'll go ahead and load this other can and get it buttoned up, and then I'll turn you back on and show you how I'm going to connect the hoses up to it, and then we'll see. Okay, so I've got this cylinder all tightened back down, and we're ready to try to push it back up in its place there where it's supposed to belong at. A little easier said than done when I took it off. Yank the pry bar up in there. Probably gonna have to do the same thing again. Hydraulic fittings here. That's the style of fitting this is. If you're not careful, you'll have these things cross-threaded because they have a flare on them that actually is down here at the end of the actual fitting. And when you go to first line them up, you got to be real careful with them because they'll cross-thread pretty fast. And if they do, you're in a world of hurt. Luckily on this particular cylinder here, the fitting that goes in for the 90 and stuff, the 90 fitting is actually removable. You can actually remove it, do away with it, but the bottom one is not. So you better be. One trick that I use on this JIC fittings like this is I'll try to wiggle them when I go to start them. And you'll feel them trying to feel the threads, and once they catch thread, then at that time, sometimes you can start them by hand. This one here is in a bind the way the hose is made. It's a little hard to get on by hand. Alright, so right there is an example where I see guys go crazy. That flare fitting right there doesn't have to be cranked on with a 6-foot cheater pipe or any of that kind of stuff. Usually, all you have to do on these hydraulic fittings is just bring them down to where they stop, and I'll try to maybe turn them like an 1/8 of a turn or something after I get them down to the stop position. And usually that's all it takes. You don't have to go all kind of crazy on these guys and put all kinds of force to them to make them tighten down. It's just not something that has to be done. The way they're designed is they tighten themselves down, they cinch down on the threads, and they're not going to leak. So this completes hydraulic cylinders for this side of the machine. This machine on this side is ready to operate. So I'm going to go ahead and let y'all go. Thanks for watching the NW Farms. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you're not a subscriber. Like the video, leave us a comment, and go ahead and share it with your friends. We'd love to have them watching our videos too, trying to learn about different things that we're doing here. So we'll catch y'all back on the next video when we return back to part 4 of working on the Spra Coupe 3440. Have a good night. We'll see you in the next one.